Hi there, I'm Isabel Lawrence and welcome to the Money Magpie podcast. Today I'm thrilled to be joined by Gary Nuttall, a self-described blockchain luminary who casts a bright light onto confusing technical jargon. He's an emerging technology consultant and cryptocurrency thought leader with extensive experience in complex business concepts. Gary, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
A pleasure to join you.
Now, you may have heard of terms such as cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, but what does it all mean? And that's why I brought Gary on here. He's going to help clear everything up for you and discuss why cryptocurrency is so popular with Gen Z. And just for reference, Gen Z are people born between 1997 and 2013. So I'm just on the cusp. I'm 98, so I'm just on the cusp of Gen Z. So let's start with the basics. What exactly is cryptocurrency?
Okay, so I describe cryptocurrency as 21st century digital money, which is a very, very broad thing. So there's several hundred cryptocurrencies, in fact, and we may have heard of things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Solana, and that. They're probably the most well-known. Bitcoins are things that exist on blockchains. So here we go. We've got some more jargon straight away. Blockchain is just a network of computers all working together to maintain a secure and reliable ledger of transactions, who's paid whom and everything. So it's a bit like a massive spreadsheet in the cloud. Those computers distributed worldwide, so controls decentralized, which makes them censorship resistant. And to understand how crypto works, you really need to understand how fiat or government-backed money works. And the short explanation is that money, whether it's crypto or fiat, it's worth whatever people agree it to be worth. And so if demand outstrips supply, basic economics, price goes up. If demand drops, the price goes down. So the key thing about crypto, though, is because it's not pegged by anything tangible and it isn't government controlled, it does mean it tends to be a bit more volatile. Exception being stable coins. Maybe we'll talk about those later. They're things that are pegged against crypto. So in essence, I say to people, don't get too hung up about what crypto actually is. Just think of it as a new way of paying for things or for saving.
Okay, great. Yeah, so it's sort of don't get bogged down in exactly what it is, just sort of think of it in that way. So according to stilt.com, 17.4% of crypto buyers are Gen Z. So what do you think makes young people so drawn to this as an investment?
So I think there's actually about 6 different reasons for this. The first of which is that Gen Z are quite savvy and they seem to be generally have a high distrust in the future of current forms of investment and savings. So you've got companies like MicroStrategy, who are a massive business intelligence company. They're now investing in Bitcoin. And they're saying that they're doing that not for the speculative nature, but as a way of hedging against the risk of traditional financial markets. So I think Gen Z, they just don't trust what the world is at the moment, so that they're looking at alternatives. It's relatively easy to get into crypto as well, as opposed to thinking about setting up an investment plan or buying shares or even opening a bank account these days. Another thing with Gen Z, that they tend to have a willingness to explore new and innovative approaches to things. So they look at things differently. Then, of course, the fourth one is that there's the lure of potential huge profits. But, a caveat: with huge profits comes potential of huge risk as well. But young people tend to be less risk averse because they've got more time left in the rest of their life to recover the losses. And then finally, younger people, they're already familiar with digital assets and tokens that they have in games like Roblox, where you've got Robux. So it's just an extension of gaming tokens for many of them. So it seems normal to them.
Yeah, and I guess sort of that generation grew up with technology, so it doesn't seem as daunting. Like you just said, it's they're less kind of worried about the risks because it's so natural to them to do things via the internet and online. But how does it differ from other investments, crypto?
Yeah. So I'm always cautious with the term investment because that's got certain meanings in traditional financial terms, and it doesn't always quite translate in the crypto world. Yeah. But if we look at it, again, there's a number of things. First of all, crypto is highly speculative. In fact, the UK government, they recently looked at it and they're still trying to work out how to regulate it. And they're talking about possibly just treating it as gambling, because it is gambling, but then so is everything else. That ties in as well that it's not regulated at the moment, and we may explore that a bit more in a minute. Another key thing is it's very reliant on self-responsibility. If something goes wrong with, how you're holding your cryptocurrency, whether it's in a wallet or a device or whatever, if it goes wrong, you can't just pop down to the local branch of crypto land to complain if it goes wrong.
Yeah.
And it can and does go wrong with sometimes simple errors. You just key a number incorrectly, or you've lost access to your wallet, or it's been stolen or something, which ties in as well. In traditional finance world, you've got things like the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, that if it all goes wrong, you've got a backstop. You don't have that in crypto. There's no one to go to. Another thing as well, there's lots of scams and manipulation and general FUD, so fear, uncertainty, and doubt. There's a lot of hype and that kind of thing. And a lot of the behavior in crypto is influencer driven. So you think about, the price of a share is influenced by how well a business is doing, what its order book is, how well it's running, everything. Whereas you get things like meme coins, so these like Doge and Shiba Inu, which are like pictures of dogs and that kind of thing, they can go up in price by 10% just by Elon Musk posting a photo of his dog. Yeah. So it's something of a different world.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I think that would be something that would, worry me a bit, is these kind of meme coins and things like that. So would you say to sort of go for a more, what would be the word, sort of
safer
sort of crypto, sort of something that's quite, it's got a good sort of standing, things like Bitcoin, things like that?
It really depends why you're buying these things, what your risk appetite is. If you're looking for long-term investments, and this is not financial advice, I always caveat that, you tend to find that the better recognized cryptos tend to be a little bit more stable. So like Bitcoin at the moment, I think that it's about 45% of the entire cryptocurrency market is Bitcoin. So
Wow.
that's a substantial one. Whereas you get some of these meme coins that have appeared from nowhere. Some team in some far off country have written a white paper saying, oh, this is an amazing thing, please buy it. And then it disappears. It's what's known as a rug pull, which is where they create a project, they spin it up, they get people to buy their tokens, and then they disappear overnight. There's a lot of that stuff going on. Whereas things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, the kind of like the top 10, top 20 of the crypto world, they tend to be less manipulated in that way.
That's really interesting. And I know you spoke earlier slightly about regulation. So how can people kind of ensure they're investing safely in crypto, and how is it regulated, if at all?
Yeah, a great question. So it's not regulated yet in the UK. So the FCA, so that's the Financial Conduct Authority, who's the financial regulator in the UK.
Yeah.
They've already banned certain things like crypto derivatives from being sold to customers in the UK. So these are complex instruments that are wrapped around cryptos, things like exchange traded funds. So the FCA said, they are just hugely speculative and too risky. And there is a lot of regulation on the way. So going through Parliament at the moment, there's the Financial Services Markets Bill. This has got a whole load of stuff about rules on crypto. And the FCA is introducing new rules in the UK from October of this year around the marketing of crypto products, having things like cooling off periods, so an opportunity to change your mind. But the other thing as well, maybe bizarrely, even though crypto is not regulated, any firms offering crypto services to consumers in the UK do need to be registered with the FCA. So they're responsible for things like money laundering and that kind of thing. And I'd offer there's three main areas that catch crypto investors out, which is market volatility, the sheer fact that the prices can leap up and down. There's scams, phishing, hacking, rug pulls, and manipulation. And then there's theft and loss. And they're the three things. So I was going to offer how to deal with each of those three issues, if that would be interesting to your listeners.
Yeah.
So certainly market volatility, as with any investment, never put in more than you can afford to lose. And by lose, I do mean completely. It can and does happen that sometimes things just go value down to zero. People who trade have got tools and techniques to deal with volatility. So you'll hear about things like hedging and stop losses and entry and exit points. But for investors tend to think longer term. So volatility is actually less of an issue. And this is where the term in the market hodl comes in, which is hold on for dear life. And what that basically means is, don't buy and sell frequently, regularly, just buy and hold and wait. And if we look at, Bitcoin, for example, always in the news, it's just dropped down by several $1,000s in the last few days. So it sounds horrific, but it actually started the year. It was worth $16,800. I think it was beginning of the year. It's now $25,000. That's still a 50% gain in 6 months, which for most investment schemes is not bad going. As I say, this isn't advice, however. The second area, I mentioned scams and phishing and hacking there. This comes down to doing your own research. And by that, I don't mean relying on reading someone else's research. Join groups, listen, learn, but don't accept recommendations. Learn about what projects are about or what the tokens are about. Really easy rule, particularly true in crypto, is that if it sounds too good to be true, it's a scam. So don't believe in any of these get-rich schemes that guarantee a profit. And you see these things on social media groups, Discord channels, all this kind of stuff of, we guarantee you'll make X% per day. That's just so off the scale that you just know it's not going to be real. But some people do fall for it. So, avoid that. And then the third thing, losing your crypto tokens or your cryptocurrencies. One of the major ones is through theft, and that's through hacking and that kind of thing. So never click on any links. So if you see an email come through or an SMS or a message that says, hey, click here for details of, or the other favorite one is claiming to be a crypto exchange that's been hacked. Please click on this link to reset your password. Never do that, because that usually is the actual scam. So never share what are known as your private keys. That's kind of like effectively your passwords, your crypto wallets. Never share those. Don't do things like take photos of your keys or what are known as your seed phrase. So this is a thing that's used as a clue to your crypto wallets. Don't take photos and stick them on the cloud, because there are people who search Google Cloud for images of seed phrases and that kind of thing, and don't print the phrase out and leave it on a desk. So, do invest in what's known as a hardware wallet. So these are things that are like super secure USB keys that hold the private keys more effectively. Buy them directly from manufacturers. Don't get them off eBay, because they'll have been hacked in some way. So that's three main ways of avoiding theft and loss, scams, and ignoring the volatility for investing.
That's really good. That's really good advice. Not financial advice, but sort of general advice. And finally, I was just going to go on to, you talked briefly earlier about digital currencies. And obviously, we've on MoneyMagpie before, we've spoken briefly about CBDCs, or central bank digital currencies. Can you sort of explain what these are very briefly, and how the UK government, the Treasury, the Bank of England, how they're looking to create these, and how they differ from crypto?
Yeah, sure. So let's kind of cover it in reverse for a minute. So crypto is decentralized and distributed and censorship resistant, whereas a central bank digital currency, by the meaning of the name, it's exactly the opposite. Yeah. It's run by the central bank, and it's completely under their control. So there's some discussion at the moment about that being introduced. The Bank of England's exploring a thing called the digital pound, or Bitcoin. They're talking about it. They're actually running a consultation on this at the moment, which most people don't seem to be even aware of. One of the problems with the CBDC is that it kind of behaves similarly to a cryptocurrency, but because it can be controlled, you can use it to limit how it can be spent, how it can be saved. You can automatically impose a tax on it. So it's quite a worrying thing in that respect. And the overall, whilst the ethos and the approach is very different, the way a CBDC works and a crypto works is very similar. They're both digital. They can both be accessed via a wallet, which is a bit of software on your computer, and they both involve a ledger of transactions. So what I'm kind of hoping is that if governments adopt central bank digital currencies, which makes digital currency normal, then having a crypto version just won't seem that different. But the important thing with the crypto version is that you've got complete control, and your funds can't be taken away by the government or censored or restricted in any way, which again comes back to the Gen Z attitude. They like the freedom of choice to do what they want.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, for example, if the government chose to control your money in a particular way, like you said, could they just say, "Oh, you earned this amount, but we're just going to tax you a bit more," or "Oh, someone sent you some money, we're going to tax that"? Could they have the power to do that?
Yeah, and it's one of those things. But being a technologist, I love the way the technology works. But I'm also aware that what is it? With great power comes great responsibility. So the idea of automatically taxing, actually, from a taxpayer perspective, I think is really good. You don't have to worry about, have I done my tax form right? Have I claimed the right thing? It's just automatic. You don't think twice about it. That's pretty good. But what happens if they start increasing the tax, or they do what happened in Cyprus a few years ago, where the government imposed, it was either a 10 or 20%, what they called a haircut, which basically meant they took 20% out of your bank account and said it's now the government's. It's that kind of thing that's quite worrying. Or you look at what happened recently in Canada, where the government mandated to the banks that if you were a Canadian trucker involved in some protests, then your bank accounts were frozen. So that's a political thing, and that's going beyond the bounds. So
Yeah, it's quite worrying, really. But like you say, there are kind of pros and cons to it. So, I think it'll be really interesting. Maybe in like a year from now, we can catch up again and see how things have changed. That would be really interesting. But for now, thank you so much for your time today. I've been Isabel Lawrence. I was chatting to Gary Nuttall, cryptocurrency expert and thought leader. And please note, nothing that's been said in this podcast should be taken as financial advice. The buying and selling of goods should be done at your own due diligence. For more information, head over to moneymagpie.com for more on crypto, Bitcoin, NFTs, the blockchain, and more. Thank you so much, Gary.
a pleasure as always.